This happened over the course of 8 months, and I'm still processing everything. I never thought I'd be writing something like this. But here we are. Names changed, for obvious reasons. I've been married to Sarah for 6 years. We met in college, dated for 3 years, got married at 26. I'm now 32. She's 31. I work in software development. She's a marketing coordinator. We bought a house together 4 years ago, have 2 cars, the whole suburban dream. Or so I thought. Looking back, the first red flag was so subtle I almost missed it entirely. It was a Tuesday evening in March. I came home from work around 6:30, and Sarah was on her laptop at the kitchen table. Nothing unusual there. She often worked late or browsed social media after dinner. But when I walked in, she immediately closed the laptop. Not minimized a window, not switched tabs, closed it completely. "Hey babe," I said, kissing her cheek. "How was your day?" "Fine," she replied, but her voice had this weird edge to it. "Just work stuff." I didn't think much of it at the time. We all have work things we don't want to discuss at home. But over the next few weeks, this behavior became a pattern. Every time I walked into a room where she was on her phone or computer, she'd quickly put it away or flip it face down. The second thing I noticed was her phone habits. Sarah had never been secretive about her phone. We knew each other's passcodes, would grab each other's phones to check the weather or send a quick text. Standard married couple stuff. But suddenly, her phone was always face down, always on silent, and always within arm's reach. One morning in early April, she was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Without thinking, I glanced over. The message preview showed, "Can't wait to see you tonight." Same place as, but the rest was cut off. The sender was listed as Jamie. Gym. I knew Sarah had joined a new gym a few months earlier. She'd been going religiously, which I thought was great. She seemed happier, more energetic. I figured Jamie was her workout partner, or trainer. But something about the message felt intimate. When she got out of the shower, I casually mentioned, "Your phone buzzed. Something about meeting Jamie tonight?" Her face went white for just a second before she recovered. "Oh yeah, we're trying a new spin class. I meant to tell you I'd be home late." That night, she came home at 10:47 p.m. I know, because I was watching the clock. She said the class ran long, and then they grabbed smoothies after. She showered immediately and went straight to bed. The paranoid part of my brain started whispering, but I pushed it down. This was Sarah, my wife, the woman who cried during dog commercials and saved every anniversary card I'd ever given her. But the signs kept coming. If you're still listening, I'm trying to get something. This is a new channel I just started, and I'm looking to gain new subscribers. So if you like content like this, drop a like and a follow. It takes 10 seconds. Sorry for the break. Enjoy the rest of the story. In May, I noticed she'd started dressing differently. Not drastically, but she was putting more effort into her appearance. On days when she claimed to be working from home, new underwear appeared in her drawer. Lacy, expensive stuff that I'd never seen her wear. When I complimented her on a new dress, she got defensive. "I can't buy myself nice things now? Sorry for wanting to feel good about myself." The financial changes started around the same time. We'd always been pretty open about money. We had joint accounts for household expenses and individual accounts for personal spending. But Sarah started making comments about our finances that didn't make sense. "We should really start keeping better track of our assets," she said one evening, apropos of nothing. "For tax purposes, maybe get everything appraised." Our assets? We have a house, 2 cars, and some 401ks. It's not that complicated. But she persisted. She suggested we get the house appraised, wanted to know the exact balances of all our accounts, asked detailed questions about my stock options from work. She framed it as being financially responsible, but it felt like reconnaissance. The turning point came in June. Sarah said she was going to a work conference in Denver for 3 days. She'd mentioned this conference before, so I didn't think much of it. But the night before she left, I was helping her find her charger when I saw her packing that expensive lingerie for a work conference. My stomach dropped, but I kept my voice steady. Big plans for Denver? Just the usual boring conference stuff, she said, not meeting my eyes. While she was gone, I did something I'm not proud of. I logged into our phone account online and checked her usage. The records showed dozens of calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize. Long calls, some lasting over an hour. The number had a local area code. She wasn't in Denver. Or if she was spending a lot of time talking to someone back home. When she returned, she seemed different, distant. She was constantly checking her phone, more secretive than ever. She started working late more often, going to the gym more frequently, making plans that didn't include me. That's when I made the decision that probably saved my life as I knew it. I called my college roommate, Mike, who'd become a divorce attorney.
Mike, I need some advice. Hypothetically, if someone wanted to protect their assets in case of a divorce, what would they do? There was a long pause. Jesus, man, are you and Sarah okay? I don't know. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but I want to be prepared. Hypothetically, Mike explained that in our state, anything acquired during marriage was considered marital property, subject to division, but there were legal ways to protect assets through trusts and proper documentation. He offered to meet for coffee to discuss it further. But dude, he said, if you're at the point where you're calling me, you should probably also be calling a private investigator. I laughed, but he wasn't joking. 2 days later, I was sitting across from a PI named David Chen in a diner outside of town. David was nothing like what I expected, mid-50s, soft-spoken, looked more like an accountant than someone who followed cheating spouses. I don't want to follow her, I said. I just want to know if I'm going crazy. David nodded. A lot of my clients start there. Tell me what you've noticed. I laid out everything, the phone secrecy, the mysterious texts, the financial questions, the lingerie for a work conference, the suspicious phone records. As I talked, David took notes. The conference alibi is easy enough to check, he said. If she registered, there'll be records. The phone number is trickier, but we can run it. 3 days later, David called me at work. We need to meet. Sarah had never registered for any conference in Denver. The hotel she claimed to stay at had no record of her, but a hotel 50 miles outside our city had a record of Sarah booking a room for 3 nights, under a different last name. The phone number belonged to James Morrison, a 34-year-old marketing director at a company across town. He was divorced, lived alone in a downtown condo. David had surveillance photos of Sarah's car in the visitor parking section of James's building on multiple occasions. How long do you think this has been going on? I asked. David shrugged. Based on the phone records you showed me, at least 4 months of regular contact. But they could have known each other longer. I felt like I was going to throw up. There's something else, David said. I did some research on this James guy. He's got a reputation. 2 previous relationships that ended with the women claiming he helped them strategize their divorces to maximize financial gain. Nothing provable, nothing criminal, but there's a pattern. The pieces clicked into place. Sarah's sudden interest in our finances, her questions about asset valuation, her secretive behavior. This wasn't just an affair, this was a plan. That night, I went home and looked at my wife. Really looked at her. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, and I felt like I was seeing a stranger. How long had she been planning this? How long had I been living with someone who was actively plotting against me? I started my own planning that night. First, I called Mike and set up a meeting to discuss asset protection trusts. He explained that while I couldn't hide marital assets, I could structure things to minimize potential loss and ensure a fair division. More importantly, I could protect my premarital assets and any inheritance from my grandmother that I'd been keeping in a separate account. The key, Mike said, is that everything has to be legitimate
and above board. We're not hiding assets, we're protecting them legally. Over the next 2 months, I quietly restructured my finances. I moved my inheritance into an irrevocable trust, properly documented which assets were premarital, and made sure all our joint accounts had clear records of contributions. I also started keeping meticulous records of our household expenses, Sarah's spending patterns, and her behavior. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. Sarah would come home from her gym sessions or work events, and I'd ask about her day like nothing was wrong. She'd lie to my face with such ease that it was almost impressive. In August, things escalated. Sarah started bringing up divorce in hypothetical terms during conversations with friends. At a dinner party, she made a comment about how marriage is so outdated and how people change and grow apart. Our friends looked uncomfortable, and I played along, making jokes about how she was stuck with me. But I was taking notes. The breakthrough came in September. Sarah had left her laptop open on the kitchen table while she took a shower. I'd never snooped through her personal things before, but I'd also never had reason to think my wife was planning to financially destroy me. I found a folder, labeled Financial Planning, that contained screenshots of all our account balances, a document listing all our assets with estimated values, and a series of email exchanges with James discussing strategy. The emails made me physically sick. They talked about me like I was a mark, a target to be manipulated. James had coached her on how to act during a divorce, how to maximize her settlement, how to claim financial need. There were discussions about her quitting her job to reduce her income before filing, about claiming I was controlling with money, about painting me as an absent workaholic husband. But the worst part was how they talked about our marriage. Sarah described our entire relationship as a mistake and said she'd been playing a role for years. She called me predictable and easy to manipulate. I took photos of everything with my phone, then closed the laptop and went for a drive. I sat in a parking lot for 2 hours, crying and trying to process what I'd just read. When I got home, Sarah was making dinner like nothing had happened. "How was your day?" she asked, kissing my cheek. "Fine," I said, "just the usual." The irony wasn't lost on me. I immediately sent everything to David and Mike. David said the emails were exactly the kind of evidence that would be crucial in divorce proceedings. Mike said they showed clear intent to defraud and could significantly impact any settlement. "She's been planning this for months," Mike said. "But now you have proof, and more importantly, you have time to prepare." October was the longest month of my life. I knew Sarah was getting ready to pull the trigger, but I didn't know when. She'd become almost completely distant, barely speaking to me except when necessary. She was staying out later, being more careless about her lies. It felt like she was trying to provoke me into confronting her, maybe to give her grounds for some kind of victim narrative. I didn't take the bait. Instead, I used the time to gather more evidence and shore up my legal position. David continued surveillance and documented multiple meetings between Sarah and James. Mike helped me ensure all my asset protection was ironclad and that I had a paper trail for everything. I also did something that felt necessary but awful. I started secretly recording conversations. Mike had checked that our state was one-party consent, meaning I could legally record conversations I was part of. I bought a small digital recorder and started carrying it whenever Sarah and I talked about anything significant. The recordings revealed just how calculated her behavior had become. She would bring up topics designed to get me to say things that could be used against me later. She'd make comments about feeling financially trapped or claim I was controlling about money, then try to get me to respond defensively. But I'd learned to be careful. I stayed calm, agreed with her when she made reasonable points, and avoided taking any bait. The end came on November 15th, a Tuesday evening. I came home from work to find Sarah sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of her. "We need to talk," she said. I sat down across from her, and she slid a document across the table. Divorce papers. "I've been thinking about this for a long time," she said, not meeting my eyes. "We've grown apart. We want different things. I think it's better if we end this now before we start hating each other. I picked up the papers and read through them. She was asking for half of everything. The house, my 401k, my stock options, even the trust I'd inherited from my grandmother. Her lawyer had claimed she contributed equally to all marital assets and was entitled to half of everything acquired during our marriage. This seems pretty comprehensive, I said calmly. You must have put a lot of thought into this. She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I just want to be fair. Fair, I repeated. That's interesting. I set the papers down and looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd loved, the woman who'd been planning to betray me for months. Before I respond to this, I said, I have a question. Is there someone else? She didn't hesitate. No, this isn't about anyone else. This is about us not working anymore. I nodded. Okay. I need some time to review these papers and talk to a lawyer. Is that reasonable? She looked surprised by how calmly I was taking it. I think she'd expected me to fight, to beg, to give her ammunition for her victim narrative. Of course, she said, take all the time you need. That night, she stayed in the guest room. I lay in our bed, staring at the ceiling, and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The waiting was over. The pretending was over. Now I could stop playing defense and start playing offense. The mediation was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Sarah seemed confident, almost cocky. She'd moved in with her sister temporarily and was telling everyone that I was being difficult about the divorce. She played the role of the long-suffering wife who just wanted a clean break from her workaholic husband. Our mutual friends were divided. Some believed her narrative. Others sensed something was off. I didn't try to defend myself or explain what was really happening. I figured the truth would come out soon enough. The morning of mediation, I met with Mike one last time to review our strategy. Remember, he said, let her present her case first. Let her commit to her story. Then we present our evidence. Sarah arrived at the mediator's office with her lawyer, looking confident and put together. She dressed carefully, professional but approachable, like someone you'd want to help. The mediator, a woman named Patricia Reed, explained the process and asked Sarah to present her position first. Sarah's lawyer laid out their case. Sarah had been a devoted wife for 6 years, had contributed equally to the marriage, and was simply asking for a fair division of assets. She claimed I was a workaholic who had emotionally neglected her, that she'd sacrificed her own career advancement for the sake of our marriage, and that she needed financial support to get back on her feet. It was a compelling narrative, and if I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed it myself. When it was my turn, Mike stood up with a thick folder. Your Honor, he said, we have some additional information that we believe is relevant to these proceedings. He started with the phone records, showing the months of contact between Sarah and James Morrison. Then the hotel records, proving she'd lied about the Denver conference. Then the surveillance photos, documenting their affair. Sarah's face went white, but her lawyer recovered quickly. Even if there was an affair, that doesn't change the fact that Mrs. Patterson is entitled to her fair share of marital assets. You're absolutely right, Mike said. But this does. He pulled out printed copies of the emails I'd found on Sarah's laptop. The ones where she and James discussed their strategy for maximizing her divorce settlement. The ones where they called me a mark and discussed how to manipulate the proceedings. These emails show clear intent to defraud, Mike continued. Mrs. Patterson and her disgusted partner have been planning to manipulate these proceedings for months. They've discussed having her quit her job to reduce her income, coached her on how to lie about the marriage, and strategized about how to maximize her settlement through deception. The mediator read through the emails, her expression growing more serious with each page. Furthermore, Mike said, Mr. Patterson has been legally protecting his assets in accordance with state law. The trust mentioned in the divorce filing contains only premarital assets and inheritance, which are not subject to division. Mr. Patterson's grandmother's trust was established before the marriage and has been properly maintained as separate property. He pulled out more documents, bank records, showing exactly what I'd contributed to our joint accounts, receipts for household expenses, documentation of every major purchase we'd made during our marriage. What we see here, Mike continued, is not a wife asking for a fair division of assets. This is an orchestrated attempt to defraud Mr. Patterson with the help of a partner who has apparently done this before. Sarah's lawyer was frantically whispering to her, but Sarah wasn't listening.
She was staring at the printed emails like she couldn't believe they were real. "How did you—" she started, then stopped herself. "Mrs. Patterson," the mediator said, "do you dispute the authenticity of these communications?" Sarah looked trapped. She couldn't deny the emails without committing perjury, but admitting to them destroyed her case. She started, then looked at her lawyer helplessly. Her lawyer asked for a recess to confer with his client. They stepped outside for 20 minutes, and when they came back, Sarah looked like she'd been crying. "We'd like to revise our proposal," her lawyer said quietly. The final settlement was nothing like what Sarah had originally demanded. She got half of our truly joint assets, the value we'd built in the house, half of what we'd both contributed to joint accounts, her own 401k. But she got nothing from my inheritance, nothing from my premarital assets, and no alimony. More importantly, Mike had included a clause requiring her to pay my legal fees due to the attempted fraud. As we signed the papers, Sarah finally looked at me directly for the first time in weeks. Regretfully. "I never meant for it to happen like this," she said quietly. Coldly, "Yes, you did," I replied. "That's exactly what the emails show." She didn't have an answer for that. The aftermath was swift and brutal for Sarah, though I took no pleasure in watching it unfold. James Morrison, her partner in this scheme, disappeared from her life the moment things went south. Turns out that when you're dating someone specifically to help them defraud their spouse, you don't stick around when the plan fails. Sarah had to move back in with her parents since she couldn't afford to keep staying with her sister. She'd quit her job as part of their strategy to reduce her income for the proceedings, but now she couldn't get it back. Her reputation in our social circle was destroyed when the truth came out. I didn't spread the story myself, but in a town like ours, word travels fast. People knew there had been an affair, knew there had been some kind of financial manipulation attempt, and they drew their own conclusions. Sarah tried to do damage control, claiming I'd been controlling and manipulative, that she'd been driven to desperate measures by my behavior. But too many people had seen the evidence during the mediation. Her lies couldn't survive the scrutiny. The hardest part was losing mutual friends who chose to believe her version of events, despite the evidence. Some people will always side with whoever they perceive as the victim, regardless of facts. But honestly, I was okay with that. Anyone who could look at documented evidence of planned deception and still blame me for driving her to it wasn't someone I needed in my life anyway. As for me, I kept the house. I kept my assets. I kept my dignity. And I learned some valuable lessons about trust, vigilance, and the importance of protecting yourself even in the closest relationships. It's been 4 months since the divorce was finalized. I started dating again, slowly and carefully. I've reconnected with old friends and made some new ones. I've thrown myself into work and hobbies I'd neglected during the marriage. Some people ask if I'm bitter, if I hate Sarah for what she did. The honest answer is no. I'm disappointed. I'm sad about the waste of 6 years, and I'm glad I discovered her true nature before we had kids together. But I'm not bitter. If anything, I'm grateful. Grateful that I trusted my instincts when something felt wrong. Grateful that I took steps to protect myself instead of ignoring the red flags. Grateful that I had friends like Mike and professionals like David who helped me navigate the situation. I learned that love and trust are not the same thing. I learned that protecting yourself doesn't make you paranoid or cynical. It makes you responsible. I never wanted to play chess with my marriage, but when someone forces you into the game, you better make sure you know how to win. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Don't forget to live a like, and if you enjoy more stories like this, subscribe for more. Catch you on the next episode.